Hello, everyone. So we are going to kick this off, and we are talking today about diversity, bias, and inclusion. I'll be moderating this session at the end, so what you're going to see are 3 15-minute presentations, or about 15 minutes, from Shelly Winner, from Nathan Mondragon, and also from Kimberly Jones, and they are in the right order in your booklet. And so I'm not introducing their company names for a reason, and you'll see what that reason is at the end of all of our presentations. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Nathan. If you'd like to come on up, if we can welcome him to the stage. He is going to kick us off today with his presentation, and we are looking forward to it. So thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to involve you. I want to get some real quick data collection. Being an industrial psychologist, I live with data. I love data. It's what we do, sort of as a core. We're going to talk about human bias, right? Raise your hand. Did you see the article about Amazon the last couple of weeks? And their resume, so, yep, we'll talk about a little bit about that. So real quick, that was they took a team of data scientists, locked them up in a room for a series of months to see if they could generate some machine learning algorithms to predict success of software developers based upon resume screening from the resumes that they had in their database, right, to predict successful software developers. They canned the program. Why did they can the program? Anybody know? Bias. The algorithm basically predict a bunch of white males, right? Who do you think are the software developers at Amazon? 90% white males. So the data going into the algorithm was baked right into the algorithm predicting what's going to come out of it. We'll talk a little bit about that. So, but let's talk about hiring. We're here to mainly talk about hiring, resumes, testing, interviews, normal procedures you follow in your evaluation selection process, right? I'll belabor to speed this up. I won't belabor the point, but resume bias, everybody's familiar with resume bias. If I showed 2 equal resumes to a bunch of recruiters, a bunch of folks in the room, everything was equal but the name, when one was Kimberly Smith and one was John Smith, who gets chosen 2 times as often? John. Kimberly Smith and Juan Rodriguez, who gets chosen 2 times more likely? Kimberly, right? It's just inherent in us that we go through it. Testing has its bias as well. That's my profession, right? I've spent 20 plus years technology enabling and redoing assessments and testing. That's my sweet spot. And there's always bias in tests. Cognitive abilities have racial differences. Personality tests have gender differences. Which gender do you think is more social on a personality test? Extroverted and social? Female, right? Okay. So it's baked into the testing. Interviews, normal thing. You could have the best interview of your life, but that manager or that recruiter may zone out for a couple of seconds and miss the best thing that you ever said in the interview, and it's gone. Okay. So there's bias in every step of the hiring process. Everybody here is an HR recruiter. Probably if we did collectively across the room all the interviews and hires that have been made, it would be in the thousands. And everybody says, I do this, talk to a lot of HR folks, everybody says, I'm an HR professional, I've done this forever. I can kind of leave my biases, leave those checks at the door. I'm okay, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, as a psychologist, we don't practice the best judgment as humans, right? We just don't. Everybody's got we could go around the room and everybody would have a situation where they were presented with all the options of what path to follow, and everything said, go down path A. And we went down path B, right? Logically, everything was, all the data said, go there, and we went there. It's what we do. That's also what makes us great. But that lack of sort of rational judgment in decision-making gets us in trouble, especially from a hiring perspective and a bias perspective. So at HireView, I won't talk much about what we do, but we're a video interview company. Right, we've got over 8 million videos in our database of people that have applied for jobs across 600 customers that we have. They do a video interview, they record their answers, et cetera. We take that video data, and we have about a team of 10 data scientists and 12 occupational or industrial psychologists as well. About 22 folks that focus on how do we look at this video data to do something predictive with machine and deep learning applications of success on the job. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail on that, but one of the things we also do is look for bias. Since we're using machine deep learning or AI, we want to make sure there's no bias in it, because that's inherent in the algorithms if you bake it in. So we started to look at attractiveness, right? Beauty premium. Anybody heard of the term beauty premium? Common thing in the research, right? It's there. We attach decisions to beauty, even irregardless of qualifications, et cetera. So we had a million videos in our database. We went through. We started to train the machine to look for assigning an attractiveness score based on facial symmetry, right? If all the brain assigns an attractiveness score based on facial symmetry, it's what we do. You do it every day, every second. We started to train the machine to mimic that, and then the machine took over with deep learning applications, truly starting to get into some AI, so it started to teach itself. And we came up with a very complex attractiveness algorithm. Remember the 4 pictures we had here? The 2 guys on the left, the attractiveness score is there. Low is bad, high is good as far as attractiveness goes. So the 2 guys, I won't go into the details of who they are, but the guy, B, basically on the lower left, so your snap judgment, you assign a beauty score, and that's reflected in what you're shouting out. Irregardless of any information you have, because you don't have any other information on these people, you just hit B, right? Same thing on the ladies. It's a little bit of a closer A and B mixed typically, and the delta between the 2 scores is closer as well. We took 50,000 data records from our database across those many companies, 50,000 applicants for jobs, scored the applicants on beauty, and then looked at who got hired, irregardless of qualifications and everything else. Here's an actual graph. That attractiveness score from, we chopped off the bottom and the top ends there for consistency. But if you look at it, an attractiveness score of 7, 14% likelihood of being hired. Attractiveness score of 3, 7% likelihood of being hired. 2 times the likelihood of being hired, the more attractive you were, or the applicant was. Right? Irregardless of all the other stuff, everything else being equal. So that was 50,000 applicants, 5,000 hires. We also had algorithms that looked at how these people performed on the job and predicted success with our algorithm, et cetera, and took all that out of it, right? And attractiveness kicks in. So you can't avoid this as recruiters, as hiring managers. It's part of who we are. Again, it's also what makes us great, but we have to be aware that this is an issue when we're doing hiring or evaluation or screening. So what do? Tools are biased, people are biased, unconsciously, et cetera. AI is here to kind of help, not replace, but help. I heard earlier on the panels, people talking about facilitate human judgment and human decision with AI. Not replace it, facilitate it. And so what we do at HireView is we, using the AI and the video, et cetera, we'll screen the candidates down to 3, 4, 5 candidates and present those candidates to hiring manager, and then they can't make a wrong decision, basically. They can choose who fits their team better, but everybody's been qualified, prediction of success, et cetera, on the competencies of success for that job through the AI. You heard Lou talk about predicting, not competency, but predicting success on the job. And that could be different. For a sales job, it's sales quota attainment. For a developer, it might be quality or something else, right? Promotability, that kind of stuff. Use those metrics to generate your AI. That's our approach. So, but AI is biased, right? It's not perfect. There's some recidivism rate things, popular press, all this stuff is true. If you put the wrong data into the AI, you're going to come out with biased predictions coming out of it. A couple of popular press things, globally, UK, you name it. Right? But there's also benefits, and again, I won't go into these, drones, autonomous vehicles, Watson's Health stuff, looking for malignancy, helping out radiologists. These are all true examples. The auto one that Uber bought is kind of near and dear to my heart because that self-driving truck delivered thousands of cases of beer from Anheuser-Busch in Fort Collins, Colorado, down to Colorado Springs, Colorado. I live right between there, outside of Boulder, Colorado. So that truck drove near my house 4 or 5 a.m. on Sunday back like a year ago, something like that. But it's good stuff, right? It works when it's done right. But there's the downside to it. So are the benefits worth it? You look at some of the popular press, and there was the self-driving Uber vehicle that killed a pedestrian. You might have saw that in Arizona. Tesla, autopilot, those crashes, people dying. But look at the stats on the bottom. And I'm not going to read them to you. But there's a big compelling case where autonomous vehicles, AI driven within cars, et cetera, emotion detection in cars. There's some software being deployed in vehicles for driver type jobs, and it can detect if you're tired or if you're angry, et cetera, because it's reading the emotions on the face. And then it can react to you while you're driving to help you out. Maybe it gives you a little jolt on the steering wheel if you're getting tired. But it's reading the emotions on the face and what you're doing to help those professional drivers from making mistakes. All right, so the idea, if you're going to use AI in the hiring process, you got a twofold sort of solution that you're after. You want to make sure it's predictive of success and whatever that is, and you want to make sure that you're minimizing the bias, right? So you heard Luz talk about how do you predict success. You want to look for those success factors. What are those? And they're different by job, they're different by company, et cetera. You want to make sure what those are and then build your algorithm to predict that, because that's a successful hire, right? Okay? Not their skills, not their education, not the school they went to. Those usually don't have any prediction of success, actually, in all the resumes we've evaluated. It's another study I won't bore you with. And then you want to make sure that there's no bias in that algorithm. And that's a key point. Amazon tried doing the prediction of software developers, and they forgot about the bias. And you got to look at both, and you have to look at the data sets before they go in. So let's talk about that. What do you see on the left? What is that? Wolf. What's on the right? Husky. Okay. Now what do you see? A little bit more ambivalence? Not sure? Okay. There was a study, the reference is in the paper if you want. A bunch of data scientists looked to do classifiers, to do classifications. They were looking at, can you classify a canine to be a wolf or a husky correctly? And they generated, thousands and thousands of pictures of wolves and huskies, and they came up with a 90+% accuracy algorithm that they said correctly classified a wolf or a husky in the picture. And you looked at it and it was right. But they didn't look at the data going into the algorithm. And we started to look at heat maps and other sort of data analysis techniques. They looked at the algorithm, and actually what was happening is the computer was focusing on the background, not the features of the canine. So in this picture, let me go back. See the wolf with all the snow in the background? And the husky with, kind of natural landscape, but no snow? Basically, wolves were in the wild, and it was picking up on snow in the background. And huskies were more domestic, and it was picking up on grass and other things. That was the difference the computer focused on. So when you look at the husky, even the crowd, not that you guys were like highly yelling out, on this picture, even the human brain, there's like a pause. Is that a husky or not? I think just the snow in the background throwing you off. The same thing on the computer. The computer picked up on that. That would have been classified as a wolf. Okay, and those were the errors. So you've got to get your hands dirty with the data to start to look at how you can get rid of bias. So if you're going to deal with an AI vendor doing whatever it might be, you want to make sure that if they're generating an AI tool for you or an AI, whatever the outcome is, you've got to get their hands dirty with the data to make sure that there's no bias. Amazon made the fatal mistake. So with we'll do questions at the end, right? Because I think there's a panel kind of thing. So on the left, this is an example of what we do. Since we're looking at predicting success on the job, we want to make sure that there's no adverse impact in that prediction, correct? Make sure there's no race, gender, age, disability, veteran, et cetera, status differences. On the left was a model that we had created to predict success on the job based on job performance. And I won't bore you with the details, but there is a male-female difference. Significant male-female difference, statistically and within the adverse impact ratios, called the 4/5 rule. So we looked at that and said, let's go back to the raw data. How can we get rid of the adverse impact or the bias, remove it, and generated the new algorithm, and the male-female difference disappeared on the right. So now there's no separation other than we're at a very high score. So you remove the adverse impact from the equation, recalculate the score, and check the predictiveness of it. And that we can do that because we have thousands and thousands. Actually, most of our models have about 20,000 data features in them. It's like asking 20,000 questions on a test to get 20,000 data points, but that would take days to answer. We get that in like a 15, 20-minute video interview. So you can take that 20,000 data points, remove the data points that are biased, essentially. So it went to the computer and said, now predict male, female. About 500 data points came out. We took them out of the equation, rechecked the prediction. That's what was on the left. We were predicting who was successful or not. I'll, again, not bore you with the details. You want a big bar, big blue bar on the right, and a big orange bar on the left. That means the algorithm is predictive of success. Okay? And then the bias was removed from the equation, and that's what the graph on the right is showing. So you can get best of both worlds. You can get prediction and removing bias if you do it correctly, and it kind of takes multiple fields of expertise to do this. At HireVue, we combine the IO psychologist and the data scientist together to do it. Amazon forgot about the IO psychologists. They only had data scientists, and look what they ended up with. It takes both to get there. Right? Okay. So again, I won't bore you with the details. Not a sales pitch, but at HireVue, the way we collect the data is with the video interview. So you could have a software developer. We actually have an off-the-shelf assessment for software developers that is a combination of video questions, some game questions. If it's an analytical job or it's a problem solving, we have a couple of games that go after those cognitive skills, and then a couple of coding challenges at the end. Right? It takes about 30 minutes, all in all, max. And you're getting the phone screen, first round interview, and assessment, all within 30 minutes time. And then you apply the AI looking at the cognitions, the thinking styles, personality variables, et cetera, whatever competencies you need to be successful in that job. You look at that with the AI through the video analytics. Again, won't bore you with the details. You could call HireVue if you're interested in that. Okay. So just kind of wrap up. I think we're about out of time anyway. So you can you can facilitate your hiring decision with quality improvements using AI, not replace the manager, not replace the recruiter, facilitate the decision. What most of our companies are doing from a recruiter perspective is they're having recruiters focus on either sourcing to bring people in or closing to convince them to close them on the job. All the administrative junk in the middle that no recruiters really like to deal with anyway can be replaced by the AI or helped with AI, right? And then you can remove your bias. Bias can be, you can mitigate it with AI as well. Humans are, we have our own issues and we have to be aware of that kind of thing. But you can facilitate your diversity hiring programs. Unilever, Unilever, right? Dove, soap, Axe, yada, yada, out of the United Kingdom had a 16% improvement in the diversity hires for their college campus hiring by using, our approach. Right? If you make sure you're not having bias in the selection process, and you increase the diversity of your pool, and then you don't have bias in your selection process, you're going to get increased diversity hires coming out of the bottom. Okay. All right, so I am done. You can find me. I'll be sitting over here the rest of the day. Come chat, and we'll talk after the panel. And I believe, Kimberly, you're up, right?
My name is Kimberly Denise Jones. I'm going to explain why I gave you my whole name in a few minutes. I am from Columbus, Ohio, and I'm going to talk to you guys about diversity, a little bit about technology, but about strategy as well. So this really is what I call my diversity story. So these are my parents, William and Bernice Jones. They were the best CEO and CFO I ever met. And they helped me learn most of what I know about diversity well before I declared HR as a career interest or TA as an actual professional. I am the youngest of 11 children. I have 9 sisters and 1 brother. My oldest sister, my brother, and then all the rest girls. And one of the things that have been most impactful for me is my parents really stressed to us the importance of we never had to be like each other, but we all had to be a Jones. We weren't forced to be or think or act necessarily the exact same way, but there were a set of values that were instilled in us as a Jones. This is a picture of one of my sisters from a wedding. Now, for me as the youngest, I was allowed to be the flower girl multiple times, which was awesome. Two of my sisters got married the same year, one a weekend apart. And so because my middle sisters were all so close, they had the exact same bridesmaids. So they wore the same pink or green taffeta dress one weekend and the next weekend, which was awesome. A couple things about growing up in a house full of sisters. Again, part of what I learned about diversity. I played in every color: wig, makeup, dress, shoes, jewelry. And so for me, not just every day, at different points in the day, I could be a different person because I had so much to choose from. The other thing that was really helpful for me about that, not just with my sisters, but being part of a large family, is we didn't necessarily have a lot of blind spots as a family because everybody thought so different and saw things differently. My sister Jackie is the only one of my sisters who's left-handed. Her son Sean has 5 boys. 3 of them are left-handed. And so how you think is a right-handed person versus a left-handed person, whether or not you think the last person who ironed left the ironing board turned the wrong way, all part of being part of this large family. I'm going to talk about blind spots at the end. I actually have 3 books to give away at the end before I finish. So this is not all of my family, but one of the family pictures that was most impactful for me. In addition to having 11 kids in my family, as if that wasn't enough, my parents decided to be foster parents. And so probably when I was maybe 5 or 6, my parents started taking in foster children, and they did that until I was probably 22. Both of my parents were 50 when I was born. And so even as they were grandparents, they were taking in babies, days old, not like a 6-month-old, babies who were 3 or 4 days old. Like small children, toddlers, and teenagers. If that wasn't enough, my mother decided to be the babysitter for the whole neighborhood. She also was the babysitter for some of my teachers because the elementary school I attended was around the corner from my house. And so my teachers would drop their children off who weren't school age to be at our house. My mother also decided to babysit children from our church as well. So now you have 11 children. We're starting to get into grandchildren and foster children and the neighbors' kids and my teachers' kids and people from church. And we still were never forced to be like anybody else in the group, but we all had to be a Jones. The other interesting thing about my diversity journey, by the time you get to kid 11, my mom was like, I'm running out of names. She allowed my sister Brenda to name me, and my sister named me after the Hollywood actress Kim Novak. I also share a name with a rapper. If you guys are hip hop fans, Little Kim, we have the same exact name, Kimberly Denise Jones. And when I applied for a security clearance when I worked for NASA, that was quite interesting. Across this spectrum of people, my actual family, and people who came to be part of my family, I can identify people or a number of people who fit into these diversity categories that we tend to talk about as talent acquisition professionals. So, ethnicity. I'm a Black woman. My father's side of the family, however, my father's from Portsmouth, Ohio. It's a very small town on the Ohio River between Ohio and West Virginia. My father's family, fairly diverse, Black, Native American, and white. And so across my family, you'll get some different, what appear to be ethnicities. My grandmother's brother was fairly fair-skinned, blonde hair, green eyes, sat on our porch. And when my parents first moved into the neighborhood that I lived in, it was not uncommon for the neighbors to come and ask my mother, who was that old white man that you guys are taking care of? And it wasn't that he was white, he was just very fair-skinned, blonde hair, and green eyes. But every single one of these kind of diversity categories are in my family. So I started my career at Nationwide Insurance Company. I said I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Nationwide is the largest company in Columbus, 35,000 employees. And so in my very first opportunity as a fairly new HR professional, my leadership team comes to me and says, we have this diversity role, brand new, and we'd like you to consider taking on this role. And so Diversity Inc. magazine was probably the magazine that was the most prevalent at the time. And so I'm like, I want to understand diversity, not compliance, not EEO, not OFCCP. I want to understand diversity. And so when I sat down and I really started to understand it, I'm like, oh man, this is great. This is like growing up in my family. Everybody can be different and welcome to help a company be successful. Sign me up for it. And that's how I really got started with diversity, not because it was clinical, not because it's what HR does and because it's compliance, is because I knew how I had benefited from it in my life growing up, being around people who were permitted to be exactly who they are to the benefit of this unit that they were part of. And so what I want to talk to you guys about today are some specific areas in talent acquisition in the hiring process. Some impacted by technology, others just by strategy, that I think are the most impactful. So the first piece I want to talk about is the beginning of the process. Who are you talking to? And yes, okay, who are you talking to? And what are you saying? Men apply for a job when they believe they match 60% of the qualifications. Women apply when they meet 100%. And a lot of times it's around word choice. Nathan, you can probably validate some of this for me. If people don't identify with the messages being told, they don't see themselves in that job, and they will never apply for it. Likewise, when they submit a resume, they aren't using words that really describe them in the way that the recruiter or the manager are actually looking at. Does everybody have an opportunity to be heard? A lot of companies have instituted diverse candidate slate. I think it's the wrong strategy. It's often administered the wrong way. There are times where companies want a diverse candidate just for the sake of saying I had a diverse candidate, but are not genuinely interested in that candidate for what they bring to the table. And so during that process, they are somewhat dismissive about giving that candidate an opportunity to really talk about who I am and how I can help your organization be successful. Is your diversity diverse? What exactly do you call diversity? Some companies were like, we believe in diversity of thought. That's nice, put it on a Hallmark card. Is your diversity diverse? Have you really made an attempt to make sure there are different types of people that are part of your organization? And different in every potential category. Being left-handed is a diversity category. How many left-handed people do we have in the room? Okay, awesome. Lou, of course. Okay, yes. Last piece around strategy and technology. Can your facts be validated by what, does your ATS system validate your facts? When you finish your hiring process, if you step away from your job posting, the list of candidates, their resumes, and the interview evaluation, could you hand that to somebody else and they actually reach the same decision that you reached based on your facts? Or has bias impacted how you evaluated that person? Nathan talked about bias. We all have it. How we intentionally or unintentionally use it typically then will determine the outcomes. But things like they came from a good school. I graduated from Wilberforce University. It's a small black college in Wilberforce, Ohio. It was founded by William Wilberforce, who was an abolitionist. They helped freed slaves who had come from Kentucky to Ohio. Nobody's checking in their college strategy for an HR graduate from Wilberforce University. I guarantee you that. But how are you validating that? What value are you giving to that person's experience? Is it just because you were looking for the clinical 1, 2, 3, or did you really give that person an opportunity to talk about what they're competent at that can help your organization be successful? Last piece is expertise. Experience and expertise I count different. Experience is how long you've been somewhere. Expertise is what you learned and how you can contribute. I can sit in my garage, it doesn't make me a car. Not a car. Now, if I can drive you somewhere without the aid of a car, that's completely different. But making sure that a person really has an opportunity to articulate to you what their expertise is and that you evaluate that expertise more accurately. So here's what I'll ask you. When you get back to your desk, back to your office, and you have this conversation about diversity, tell me what your diversity story is. So I will turn it over to Shelly now.
So today, my topic is going to be under the umbrella of diversity and inclusion, but it's going to be about hiring people with criminal records.
Hello, welcome back. I'm here with Shelly Winner, who is going to be speaking at LAX TechRecruit on diversity, biases, and inclusion. And Shelly, you have a fantastic story, which is one of the reasons I asked her to be with us here today at LAX TechRecruit. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about.
So I'm going to talk about why companies should hire people with criminal records and why everybody deserves a second chance, how we all make mistakes, but we all have a right to move on from those mistakes and achieve our full potential in life.
Thank you so much for being here, Shelly. We're looking forward to an amazing block on diversity and inclusion and biases. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So today I want to talk about stigma and how fear plays a huge part in our beliefs. Now, the definition of fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is unpleasant, likely to cause harm, or is a threat. Now, stigma is a degrading and debasing attitude of the society which discredits a person because of an attribute or such as an illness, a deformity, the color of their skin, things like that. Now, stigma will destroy a person's dignity, marginalizes the affected individuals, violates basic human rights, diminishes the chances of them achieving their full potential, and will seriously hamper the pursuit of happiness. There are many types of stigma out there, but today I would like to focus primarily on the stigma that comes along with having a criminal record. Because here in America, we struggle with mass incarceration, with 1 in 3 adults having a criminal record, and that number growing every year. With the government proud of having and maintaining that 95% conviction rate, and the prisons being a for-profit business, we don't see this problem being resolved anytime soon. Each year, more than 650,000 people are released from jails and prisons. But many companies are unwilling to hire them based on these assumptions that they're not going to be quality employees who lack social and professional skills and brand them as untrustworthy. Now, I'd like to ask the audience a question. And you guys don't have to answer, but I greatly appreciate your honesty. How many of you have ever been arrested? Raise your hand. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay, so I have another question. I expect a lot more hands to go up with this next question. How many of you have ever done something where you should have been arrested but weren't? There we go. That's what I thought. So every one of us makes mistakes in life, and sometimes those mistakes end up staying with us for the rest of our lives, but it doesn't have to be that way. If companies would allow people with criminal records to work for them, I promise you, it's not that scary. And the amazing thing is that people can and do change. And the mistakes and the struggles that we go through in life can often produce the muscle and grit required to become successful. For example, Robert Downey Jr. was introduced to drugs at the age of 8. And by the time he was 20, he was a full-blown addict in and out of prison. He got tired of that life. He decided to turn it around and is now one of Hollywood's best actors. Now, because of this stigma associated with having a criminal record, nearly 75% of formerly incarcerated individuals are still unemployed a year after release. And a lack of stable employment will increase the likelihood that an individual will return to jail or prison. Now, there are 70 million people with criminal records, and I know there's a lot of talent in that 70 million pool, because having a criminal record does not mean a lack of talent, and it should not be thought of that way. They are a person who made a mistake and are now just trying to move forward in their life. Now, I have a quick true story for you about person A and person B, who both applied for the same job at the same company. Now, person A had no criminal record, a college degree, flawless resume, all the right stuff. Now, person B, on the other hand, had a criminal record, no college degree, also had a history of struggling with addiction. Now, person A came to work and performed well, did their basic duties of their job, but person B came to work and killed it. She was enthusiastic, she worked hard, she went above and beyond her duties, which got her MVP in 2 months, promoted in 6 months, and she is still one of the top performers at this company. And this person is living proof that people can and do change. And this person is standing here right now in front of you all. Yay! Yes, I am person B, the scrapper with the criminal history. I had some major setbacks and struggles in life. I struggled with addiction to meth, heroin, and prescription pills. And I started selling drugs to support my habit. And eventually I got caught and ended up in prison. Now, after I tell you a little bit about my childhood, I'm sure you will better understand why I went down this path. I grew up with my dad in and out of prison most of my life for drugs and alcohol. He got me drunk for the very first time at the age of 11. And in high school, he had people coming in and out of our house at all hours of the night buying drugs from him. And I would find drugs to smoke, or pipes used to smoke methamphetamine throughout our house. And he glorified drug use. He told me that if I ever got any drugs, that I needed to bring them home and share them with him. Now, statistics say that 70% of children follow in their parents' footsteps. So this explains a lot why I chose the path that I chose and ended up doing the same thing as my father. Now, right after my arrest, I found out I was pregnant. And I decided right then and there I was going to change my life. Now, I was eventually released to a halfway house after my arrest to fight my case. And while I was there, a friend told me about this life-changing, faith-based drug treatment program called Teen Challenge, Adult and Teen Challenge. So I enrolled. So at this point in my life, I had hit rock bottom. And I knew that I was going to need God's guidance and strength to get through all of this. So I turned my life to Him. And while still in this program, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy named Emmanuel Jace Winner. And I'm very grateful for my mother who stepped up to the plate to take on the responsibility of caring for him. Otherwise, he would have ended up in foster care. And 2 months after I gave birth to my son, I turned myself in to start my prison sentence. Now, while in prison, I decided I wanted to turn my life around, so I utilized my time doing more drug treatment programs, more programs, just do anything that I could to become a better person. And one of these programs that I did is called Defy Ventures. Now, the great thing about Defy Ventures is it goes into the prisons and it teaches the people how to transform their hustle. So the problem is that There are a lot of talented and smart people in prison, but nobody ever gave them proper guidance and taught them to use their skills for something positive. Defy will help you transform your hustle and turn it into something legit, like owning your own business. And Defy helped prepare me for the stigmas and the barriers that it created for society. And Defy is helping transform people's lives every day in prison. And one of the most valuable things that Defy taught me was that fear is a liar, and to not let it hold me back like I had done so much in the past. Instead, I learned to embrace it, and I learned to dance with it. After I was released from prison, I was sent to another halfway house, but this time in San Francisco, to finish the remainder of my sentence. And while I was there, I decided to apply to one of the biggest tech companies in the world for a sales position, not thinking I would get it. And right after my interview, they hired me right on the spot. And it was one of the best days of my life. Here I was, fresh out of prison, and now I'm working for this superstar tech company. Life was going to be amazing. And that was until they found out I had a criminal record. And they rescinded that job offer. And now I know that most people, when faced with this type of rejection, would just give up. It's hard. And every ounce of me just wanted to say screw it and go back to what I knew how to do. But I didn't. I fought my case to them, and I wrote them this heartfelt letter, and I explained to them that I am not my past, that I have turned my life around, and here's why you should hire me. And as you know from earlier, they did. Now, I'm not telling you this because I think I'm some special star or anything. I'm telling you guys this because there are a lot of stars out there that just want to be given that chance to shine. Here's just one of many reports that have been done that shows that hiring people with criminal records is smart business. Retention rates are higher, turnover is lower, and people with criminal records are more loyal because they know that the odds are stacked against them in the workforce. And that's what motivates us to work harder. So if a person has paid their debt to society, then let's stop the continuing punishment by not allowing them to get decent jobs. And let's help them and our communities by giving them a second chance and realize that stigmas are only assumptions based on fear, not the facts. So if you are interested, my friend Richard Bronson has a website called 70 Million Jobs, and it's specifically made for people with criminal records. So I encourage you, please think about putting your next job post up on this website. Not only will it help our community, but it'll definitely give that person a second chance. So when choosing your candidates, please try to ignore the black mark, the disability, the handicap, and judge all your potential employees the same way, without prejudice. Judge them on things like merit, their personality, their qualifications, their rehabilitation efforts, and how about more importantly, on their desire to succeed against all the odds. So let's walk our new talk on inclusivity, and let's try opening our hearts and our minds, and let's give people a second chance to get their lives back together. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. So if I can have you join me up here, Shelly, you might as well keep that on. Nathan and Kim. And I know that we just get a show of hands. How many of you in the room, while they're coming up, have hired or have a policy in place that allows you to hire people with criminal records? So you do have, is some of that going on. Because it's an interesting topic, and I think we'll definitely be talking more about that. And so I know that Stacey, Broadwell, introduced me. I'm Stacey Gordon. I didn't really do a proper introduction, but I'll just say that Stacey asked me to moderate today's panel, and I'm excited to do that as I do a lot of diversity, inclusion, and career strategy work throughout the country and also globally. So I'm excited to be here today and to moderate this discussion that we're going to have. And I'd actually like to kick it off and ask Nathan, because considering your line of work, you're doing video interviewing, you did a great talk about that. At what stage of the process do you recommend that companies use video interviews?
I'm not mic'd up. Thanks. Actually, it kind of depends on the requirements of the job that's being filled, right? So we have some companies that have the video interview after pre-screening stages with the AI wrapped around it. We have some companies that put it further up in the funnel. We have one company actually that has it in the sourcing stage, so before anybody becomes an applicant. Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, and they've got some great stories actually around diversity hiring because they allow a customer, the individuals, to do what's called an open view. It's kind of like an open mic. They just go in and record themselves, answer a couple of questions talking about themselves, et cetera. And then recruiters will go and look at those videos and decide, you know what, they're a good fit for job X or job Y. And then they ask them if they want to apply and they become an applicant. So it can be, the technology is very flexible to be used for wherever you need it in the process.
Gotcha. And I asked that question because there is a concept out there, I'm sure many of you may have used also, which is blind hiring, right? And so it's at odds with video interviewing. And so I wonder what your take is on the two.
Yeah, so the blind hiring, right? You can't really kind of see who you're talking to. We've done actually a lot of studies on that, and what we find is when you use the human judgment to model upon in creating the AI, based on maybe a face-to-face interview or whatever it is, they know who the person is. That's where the bias comes in. So if you model on human judgment, bias gets baked in. If you model on job performance and success in the job and that kind of stuff, then the bias can be not baked in and can be removed. So essentially, the machine's blind. They don't care what you look like or who you are, even though they can see the face, right? It's not facial recognition that's being done. It's part of the data is facial analysis for emotions and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha, thank you. And let's see, so for Kim, you mentioned that some companies don't institute the process of diversifying their candidate pool very well, and I'd love for you to expand a little bit more about that.
So the term post and pray is utilized with great contempt, and it's typically an indication of a recruiter individually or a TA organization not having a robust strategy, knowing that they are driving the right types of candidates to their candidate pool. And so you shouldn't post a rec and then cross your fingers and hope that you have a diverse candidate pool. You shouldn't have to hope that there are veterans, that there are women, that there are ethnic minorities, that there are members of the LGBTQ community, that if you have implemented and architected the right, robust strategy, when you open up your list of candidates, it should be evidence of a really thoughtful post and source strategy. And what happens is companies are trying to manipulate the end of the process versus affect the beginning, the top of the funnel. And so having to force a female, a minority, a military, a LGBTQ candidate into your final candidate slate versus making sure that they are at the top of the funnel, that's where most companies tend to go wrong. And I'm not advocating for the exclusion of white men from a candidate pool if they are the most qualified, where I believe nobody should be disadvantaged by your diversity efforts. If you are making an honest attempt to reach out to diverse communities, and when you find that there's a shortage of those, I believe you have an opportunity to help build that skill set within that population so that the next time around you don't feel like you've had to adjust or lower your standards, that you've helped make what you're looking for in your candidate pool. So being able to approach it at the top of the funnel, I think really is the right way to impact your final selection.
Thank you. And I have a couple more questions, but I'm going to open it up to the floor because I know there were some that came in. So was there someone back here that still wanted to ask a question? No? Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question?
Not a question, but just an observation. When you were showing the slides of the wolf versus the husky, both pictures of the husky had collars. So that's one of those things that I guess you're talking about that triggers some reflex in the mind, or it's whether, I did just see it at first. When you flashed the pictures, I did not see the collar. But when you kind of held it on the husky for a while, the collar became apparent. So is that kind of what this AI is trying to work into their system as far as, you could probably elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, and that's part of the example, right, is the AI was focusing in on things that were irrelevant of the features of the canine. So 'cause they thought they could identify the canine by certain features, elements of the body, et cetera. And in fact, the AI focused on non-canine data points in the pictures. And the ones I chose that I put in there happened to have color versus black and white, but it was really the background that it was focused on. So that's the point, is you have to really be aware of what data is the AI focusing in on, so you don't make an improper decision or judgment based on that algorithm, because it could be leading you down the wrong path. I mean, take the recidivism rates and the criminal records and that kind of stuff, and the AI is ripe with being very biased against certain classes of individuals when you look at recidivism rates, repeat offender rates, and it's a classic problem, and they've got to fix it, right? Or you're just going to perpetually everybody should have a fair shot, regardless of who they are.
Okay, I have one more question for you. You mentioned that, not to put you out of a job or anything, but as an industrial psychologist, that might be something that most companies would need in order to affect a really good strategy that will help to reduce the bias. And do you have any hacks, right? Because I don't know how many of us here have a psychologist on staff, so I'm just wondering, are there any tips, tricks, things that you can provide to the audience that they could take away that would help them to immediately affect reduction in bias within their recruitment process?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest is you don't have to be an IL psychologist to do this, right? It's when you look to fill a job, and it's something that recruiters do every day, but they kind of forget about, is when you're looking at the definition of the job and you're talking to the hiring manager, make sure you focus on the things that are going to be predictive of success. And it's not usually the resume or the information in the resume. It's not the qualifications or the experience or that kind of stuff. It's not the school or the GPA. It's usually some other things. The personality, the thinking styles, everything that that was mentioned earlier. And if you focus on what it takes to be successful in the job and try to measure those success factors, then you're going to enact success. And byproduct of that is avoid the bias, because it's regardless of race, gender, age, backgrounds.
Thank you. So you've had quite a few questions thrown your way. I'm going to let Kim and Shelly close it out with a final remark, and I know you have a couple of books you'd like to give away.
3 books to give away. Anybody here that's the youngest in their family? Who's the young? Okay, I can give you. Eric, can you help me? Thank you.
One? Or 3?
One. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody here who knows that you are your parents' favorite child? Right here in the gray shirt. Anybody here who will commit to sharing this book with their team when they get back? In the red right there. Okay. Thank you.
Wow. I didn't have anything prepared, but I'm so excited to be here. I'm glad that you guys came out today, and I hope that my story had some impact on you and kind of opened your eyes a little bit and challenged your thinking. I think the most important thing is that we all make mistakes, and that's why I had everyone raise their hand when about who had done something where they should have been arrested, to kind of level the playing field. And just remember that when you guys, I just ask that you remember that when you guys do your interviewing process. And you do get a candidate that has a criminal history, because it's super important. And this is a topic that is not being talked about very much. And with 70 million people that have a criminal record, this is definitely something that needs to be talked about. And this problem needs to be addressed, because if we don't open up opportunities for people to turn their life around, then we don't leave them with any options to be successful. And we keep closing the door. Go ahead. So Ban the Box is great, but it's not perfect. For example, Ban the Box allowed me to get my foot into the door to get the interview. But the problem with Ban the Box is that when companies require you to do the criminal background, even if you're honest, the people who run the background check, you don't get to meet them. They don't know your personality. They don't get to judge you based on your merit, your qualifications, your personality, your desire to succeed. They don't know any of that. So they run your background check, and they're like, nope, she's gone. And so what good is, Ban the Box. It's like, okay, you'll get me in to meet the hiring manager, but I can't meet the people that run the background check, and they're going to automatically flag me a no because I do have a criminal record. And they're going to judge me based purely on that, and that's it. So Ban the Box is good in some ways, but in others it's really not. It is what it is, you know. I appreciate the government doing an effort to change things, but it's not 100%.
All right, well, let's give them all the...
Thank you, everybody. I'll hold the mic. I'll take that. Thank you, Dr. Nathan Mondragon. Thank you, everybody, so much for that awesome panel. Such great insights. And Shelly, thank you. You know, the funny thing is, when I first heard Shelly's talk at another conference, which is the reason why I asked her to come, I actually found myself having my own judgments and biases during your talk. And then you catch yourself because you're like, oh, that's what this is all about. So thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable presentation. Thank you, everybody.